Now, I've decided to produce a few podcasts using PowerPoint of all things. Oh my God, PowerPoint. Anybody who's been in business will know the terror of PowerPoint, death by PowerPoint. Hopefully, it won't be the case here, but I don't think I'll do it again. Actually, there's way too much effort. Anyway, this is all about Spinoza's Proposition 29 in Part 3 of the Ethics, or how to please people. A lot of the propositions you have to have read or understand a large part of the ethics to understand any one proposition, but this one sort of stands on its own to some extent. And it's all about how we are slaves to external circumstances. This particular external circumstance of either trying to please people, well, generally trying to please people. So I'll read the proposition and make some comments. So he says, we shall endeavour to do whatsoever we conceive men to regard with pleasure. In other words, trying to please people. And contrariwise, we shall shrink from doing that which we conceive men to shrink from. In other words, we don't really, or generally, do things that we think will get widespread disapproval. Yeah, there are lots of examples here. If you're at a cocktail party, you probably wouldn't turn up in your underwear or swimwear. Why? Because people would frown at you. But if you were at a swimming party or something, then yes, you turn up in your swimwear. You wouldn't go to church wearing your satanic horns, and well, let me give you an example. Many years ago, actually, I was invited to a dinner party. Not exactly my kind of thing, but I went anyway, a good friend. And if you're English, you will know that the English are absolute masters at small talk. They can do it forever. In fact, I remember once speaking to a group of people from the Netherlands, Dutch people, who were basically taking the mickey out of the English and their ability to indulge in small talk. Well, anyway, this dinner party had been going along for, well, probably about 2 hours, talking about holidays and the schools that their kids went to, and some new novel they'd read by some sort of no-mark author. And I sort of got bored with it all. And I just suddenly asked us, has anybody read Wittgenstein? I was a bit into Wittgenstein at the time. There was this sort of stunned silence around the table. I guess there'd probably be about 10 people there. A stunned silence. I had done precisely what Spinoza recommends that we don't do here, which is, I didn't shrink away from doing that which we conceived men to shrink from in that particular circumstance anyway. So the whole thing went dead, and nobody spoke for what seemed like an age. Probably was only about 10 seconds in truth. But this guy that I knew, his father was there, and he told me afterwards that his father had told him that never to invite me to one of his dinner parties again because I had absolutely no social skills. Well, I do have social skills when I want to use them, which isn't all that often actually, but it was actually quite amusing. But there we go, that's how strong these drivers are. We are always trying to please other people in some way or other, or keep them happy in some way or other. And we will generally move away from the things that we think are going to cause problems. And this proposition goes on to say, from the fact of imagining that men love or hate anything, we shall love or hate the same thing. And the key word here is imagining, because we are always imagining what will cause somebody pleasure or what will cause somebody to hate us. And, you know, I remember way back to platform shoes. I don't know if anybody remembers platform shoes. They were the most ridiculous looking things. They were shoes that had a sole that was about 4 inches thick. And normally, you know, these days if you saw somebody wearing that, you'd probably look at them and think they were a bit silly. You know, we'd be in disapproval mode. But way back then, if you saw that somebody else was wearing platform shoes, then you thought you were fairly cool in your platform shoes. Not that men, well, men did wear them actually to some extent, but it was mainly women who wore them. So from the fact of imagining that men love or hate anything, we shall love or hate the same thing. We're just mimicking, in other words, and avoiding the things that seem to be unpopular. That is, from the mere fact we shall feel pleasure or pain at the thing's presence. And so we shall endeavour to do whatever we conceive men to love or regard with pleasure. And those things are sometimes not very pleasant, which I'll get onto in the next slide, but there you can see a little emoticon or whatever they call them, clapping away and approving of your actions. So this continues with what is the best part of this proposition, in my opinion. He says, this endeavour to do a thing or leave it undone solely in order to please men, we call ambition. Now, Spinoza actually says that ambition is the root of virtually all emotions. Why? Because we're driven by desires. Ambition is always the desire to ambition is always the attempt to fulfill some kind of desire, to gain approval in this particular case. So this endeavour to do a thing or leave it undone solely in order to please men, we call ambition. Especially when we so eagerly endeavour to please the vulgar, there's a good old-fashioned word, that we do or omit certain things to our own or another's hurt. So how many times have you done something just to please other people that has been extremely painful for you? A lot. I know I've done it a lot, particularly in business environments. I remember going to, again, another dinner party, not that I go to a lot of them. This is more recent, and it was a group of business people from the IT industry, and what they wanted to talk about was rugby and golf. Now, I have no interest in sport at all, but for that evening, I feigned interest in rugby and golf. And that caused me, to be honest, now I'd probably deal with it fairly easily, but then that caused me some pain. So that we do or omit certain things to our own or another's hurt. And there you can see this character I can't remember his name, in The Simpsons that goes, ha ha, always, you know, he's the bully, always picking on somebody and getting others to take sides with him. And, you know, kids are absolute terrors for that kind of thing. If a group of kids decide that someone, or it might only need 2 or 3 kids, decide that someone is in some way a little bit different, they will pick them out and they will harass them to death. And even kids who don't particularly want to do that will join in to their own hurt, and obviously to the hurt of the person or the kid who's being picked on. If you want to see just a wonderful example of that, then watch Lord of the Flies. Wonderful film. It's quite old now, made in the 60s, I think. Also, there's a movie, I've meant to mention this for a long time, a movie called Melancholia, which I can't remember the name now of the actress. I can't remember. Anyway, wonderful film, Melancholia. It's about a large planet colliding with the Earth. It sounds like it's sci-fi, but it isn't. It's just this wonderful social commentary. And the lead woman in this is getting married, and she's surrounded with all the usual family and social claptrap, just the usual rubbish. You know, this is a high society wedding, and the reception afterwards is all high society. And in the end, she just blows up and just cannot stand it anymore. She tells her boss to go fuck himself. She basically abandons her mother. She abandons her new husband, which is hilarious. She goes and has a shag in the garden with some, anonymous guy in the reception that she didn't know prior to the reception, and then she clears off. And it's just this wonderful depiction of someone who's just had enough of, the whole fucking crappy thing, the normal social behavior that people adhere to just to please everybody else. Anyway, the film goes on, and she calmly accepts what is essentially the end of the Earth, saying at one point, the Earth is evil, no one will miss it. While her sister, who's just this ordinary woman, wants to greet the whole thing with, just some candles and a glass of wine or something. She just can't get out of the whole social thing. Anyway, I'm digressing, but wonderful film. Watch Melancholia if you get a chance, and if you if you've got the what's the word? If you've got the strength to watch it. So this one ends with, furthermore, I give the name of praise to the pleasure with which we conceive the action of another. We all want praise. I used to do a lot of public speaking, and fortunately I was reasonably good at it, and so I always used to get praise. However, the first time that I did it, I was just eaten up with nerves, and I stood there, head down, didn't even look at the audience, mumbled for about 10 minutes, and then left the podium. And the guy who'd organized the conference came to me and said, you've scored the lowest score we've ever had here. Which actually didn't upset me all that much, because it wasn't something I wanted to do again, but because of the nature of my business, I ended up doing quite a lot of it and got reasonably good at it. So anyway, most of us want to attract praise, and we want to avoid blame if we can. So furthermore, I give the name of praise to the pleasure with which we conceive the action of another whereby he has endeavored to please us, but of blame to the pain wherewith we feel aversion to this action. Now, there are dozens of these propositions in part 3 of the Ethics, and every one of them is just absolutely wonderful. I probably will do a few more, but not in this format, it's just taking too long. Anyway, I hope you sort of enjoyed that and found it informative to some extent.